online, and I just want to provide the mission and purpose of the Chronic Disease Prevention Council. The purpose of the Chronic Disease Prevention Council is to serve as a coordinating body to address chronic disease prevention in New Mexico. And our mission is to promote and improve wellness for all New Mexicans through advocacy, education, and partnerships by advocating for prevention policies and programs and facilitating collaboration among agencies and organizations working to prevent and or manage chronic disease. And so today we're advocating for prevention policies through healthy eating. And by bringing together all of you and our partners, including the American Heart Association, we're working to better manage chronic disease because we're not working alone, we're working together. And I'm glad to have you all here. We have other work groups of the council, including heart disease and stroke. We have diabetes prevention. We have a tobacco coalition, and all those link back to healthy eating and nutrition. So we're really excited to have this presentation today. And I'm going to hand it over from here to our other partner, Josh from the American Heart Association. And thank you, Devon. And I'm looking forward to seeing the presentation. Please let me know if you have any questions. And if you'd like to be a member of the Chronic Disease Prevention Council, we have quarterly meetings. The next one's coming up on March 23rd, as well as you can join any one of those other work groups. But we're glad to have you here, and let me know if you have any questions. I'll put my contact information in the chat.
Hello, thank you all for having us, and it's an honor to be a part of this great event. My name is Joshua Martinez. I'm the Community Impact Director for the American Heart Association of New Mexico, and we're happy to be a part of this great event. As you know, we host the Go Red for Native Women Heart Health Summit every year, and I see a lot of familiar names and faces out there. So, you know, this is just another event for us to be a part of to help promote healthy living, healthy eating, and of course, that all goes hand in hand with heart disease and stroke and the prevention of heart disease and stroke. So just really happy to be here and to see you all. So thank you very much for allowing us to be a part of this great event. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua. Thank you so much. And thank you so much to the CDPC, the American Heart Association, and the Department of Health for partnering with NAP to make these events possible. We will go ahead and get started with our program. Our first presenter is Sarah, and just correct me if I'm wrong. Is it Falion, Sarah?
Falion. Falion.
Falion.
Like scallion,
Falion.
but Falion.
Oh, thank you. Our first presenter is Sarah Falion. Sarah has worked as a registered dietitian nutritionist for over 16 years, working 1 year with the New Mexico Department of Health WIC program, 5 years with Christus St. Vincent Hospital, and 10 years with Santa Fe Dialysis. She currently has a small practice offering nutrition education and counseling services. Sarah feels passionately about the important role that nutrition plays in optimizing good health and well-being. She's an avid hiker, student of herbal medicine, and enjoys cooking and Kundalini yoga. Two life-changing and cherished events include her deployment to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, assisting with the Hurricane Katrina relief efforts, and her time spent in Standing Rock, North Dakota, in support of the water protectors and the tribal sovereignty. So without further ado, please welcome Sarah Falion. Thank you, Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. And as others have said, this is a really tremendous opportunity, collaboration. I want to thank Devona Valdez and the other members of that partnership, the Native American Partnership, that have brought together some really great groups. The chronic disease prevention, I just discovered you and I'm really excited to see the work that you're doing. And American Heart Association, Department of Health, all these different collaborators. So I'm really honored to be here. In addition, I just want to give a shout out to a few friends that helped me get ready for this presentation. So I just want to thank my friends Ted, Anita, and Denise for their love and support. So we are living in unprecedented times. Okay, I'm trying to. We are living in unprecedented times, and I think probably a lot of us have had some awakenings through this pandemic. And something that's occurred to me is that we are very reliant upon this food system that I don't really think it's sustainable the way it is, but it's what we have. And I'm just, thinking about the people, all the people that have stepped up, that have made it possible just for us to have a meal. It's quite extraordinary. So from the farmers and the growers and the people that, work in the slaughterhouses and the poultry farms and the fast food places and convenience stores, grocery stores, the clerks, I just want to give a shout out to all these people because they do a tremendous service for us, and they're often underpaid and their work is often in unsafe conditions. And so my hope is that as we move through this pandemic and we look at health and wellness, we begin to recognize these people and, provide, a healthier environment for them. So let's see. Okay, so this is just an outline of the program. We're going to look a little bit at some chronic disease and statistics about New Mexico. I'll make a few comments about health. The focus of this presentation is on aspects of healthy eating, and not only what we're eating, but the whole process of getting ready to eat, so to speak. We'll have a brief summary and then open it up for questions. And that's always a very exciting time for me. So if you have questions, I guess send them to the chat, and then Devona will be able to field those questions. So in looking at the Chronic Disease Prevention Council, their strategic plan, which is an excellent plan, I was very impressed with that. It looks at disease with a whole system approach. And I think this is a very significant way of looking at disease. And they focus on these shared risk factors that affect numerous disease, so that instead of just focusing on heart disease in and of itself or diabetes, they're looking at these shared risk factors. So the thinking is that if we can begin to address some of these risk factors and lessen them, then we will have a broad impact positively on lessening disease. So the risk factors that I chose to focus on, which definitely impact nutrition, both positively and negatively, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, obesity, and inactivity. And as you may know, for example, high blood pressure is what they call the silent killer. People often don't even know that they have it, and it's very preventable, but there needs to be some kind of check periodically. So if you have the opportunity to have health fairs or to see a doctor or some provider yearly, it's a good thing to get evaluated. And the same for cholesterol, to know what your readings are, because this knowledge is power. We can make better choices when we have this information. So here are some statistics from New Mexico. 30% of New Mexicans have high blood pressure. 34.3% have high cholesterol. 11.5% have diabetes. 28.8% are obese. That is a medical term that is describing, it's based on a BMI, which is a height-weight ratio of 30 or greater. And 44% have inadequate physical activity. Now, this last one is really quite amazing. That really floored me. I had no idea that was the case, because you think of people hiking and being outdoors in New Mexico, but so these situations can be very much positively influenced by diet. So looking a little bit more closely at diabetes, 12.3% of New Mexicans, adult New Mexicans, have a diagnosis of diabetes. That's a little bit higher than the US rate of 10.8%. Now, when you look at American Indian, Alaskan Natives, it's considerably more, 16.5%, compared with the white adults of 9.4%. So this clearly is impacting Native communities. Diabetes is also linked and associated with obesity. And in addition to that, it's tied in with income. And so when you look at low household income, diabetes is at 19% compared with the higher income levels of 8%. So there's really a big discrepancy there. So that's a consideration. Adults with obesity had the highest prevalence of diagnosed diabetes, 18.9%, almost 19%, compared with people of normal weight, 7%. So that's clearly shows an association between weight and diabetes. So clearly, if, hopefully it will become clear that with healthy eating, we can reduce these risk factors. And the focus for this presentation is looking at high blood pressure, cholesterol, and obesity, and lower the prevalence of diabetes, heart disease, and kidney disease. So I put this definition together. I just looked at various definitions of health. And I think what comes to mind for me with health is that it is a continuum. It's dynamic. It's not something that's stagnant. It can change positively or negatively. And so it's also looking at involving physical, psychological, spiritual, environmental, and social components. These are all aspects of who we are. So many of you are probably familiar with the social determinants of health. This diagram shows basically that there's other social systems that are outside of the individual's constitution that have a dramatic effect on health. And so access and quality education, healthcare, access to healthcare, how far does one have to travel? Do the people trust the providers that are providing them with care? The neighborhood, the physical environment, is it safe? Are you by, polluted areas? Social and community setting, and of course, economic stability. I would suggest that in addition to this model and these factors, these 5 factors, that there is something that you probably are all very familiar with, is intergenerational trauma, and that this is also affecting not only Native communities, but other communities of color, and that is something that I would say would also be a determinant of health. This just expands on the social determinants of health, kind of what it is. This is put out by Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, and it just addresses, the conditions in which people are born, grow, live, work, and age. And it's very much shaped by the distribution of money, power, and resources through local communities, nations, and the world. And the differences in these conditions lead to health inequities, or the unfair and avoidable differences in health status. So I think this is key to look at as background when we're looking at health and wellness. So now we're going to move into a little bit more about healthy eating. I like to distinguish between healthy eating and dieting. Healthy eating, I would argue, involves a lifestyle change. It's involving conscious choices of how we eat and making small changes, little changes step by step, and then building on those over a lifetime, as opposed to dieting, which is usually involving some type of radical change, either introducing or taking out something that we do for a short period of time, and then at some point it's not really sustainable. So we go back to our former way of eating. And so that the more we can build a healthy way of eating, a lifestyle, then I think we'll have more success. Healthy nutrition lifestyle. The 3 M's. I mean, if you don't take anything else away from this presentation, if you can keep these 3 factors in mind, this will help you a lot. The 3 M's being mindful eating, meal planning, and movement. And these 3 factors are, we'll touch upon a little bit more as we go. But the 3 M's, mindful eating, meal planning, and movement, will help build a healthier nutrition lifestyle. So I like this little guy. He kind of reminds me not to take myself too seriously. Okay. So the building blocks of our diet, and some of this may be review for some of you, it may be new information, but the building blocks of diet include protein, carbohydrate, and fat. And we need all 3 of these in the right proportion, hopefully with quality ingredients. And it may differ based on your age, your health situation, your activity level. When we're looking at protein, we're looking at lean sources of protein. So less fatty types of protein. And we'll get into some of the specifics momentarily. We also talk about something called high biological value, HBV. That refers to how well the body absorbs the protein. And it's good to know too that we can get protein from vegetable sources as well as animal sources. And that a lot of chronic disease is in America, especially in the United States, is attributed to excessive poor quality animal protein. And so if we can begin to look at vegetable sources, I've listed a few here: beans, lentils, tofu. There's others as well, that these, in addition to animal protein, can help provide protein in the diet. So next we look at fat, and fat is kind of complicated, and I've tried to really simplify it and just focus on a few things pertaining to fat. But the preferred fat, there's different categories of fat. And so one of the categories of fat is called monounsaturated fat, or MUFA. And this is preferred because it's going to improve what's called your HDL, which is it's one of the lipids that they check when you have your annual blood work done. And this will help improve it will improve your HDL, which is your healthy cholesterol that's moving that fat away from your heart. So these fats are liquid at room temperature. So it will be various oils, things like that. Just as an aside, it's good to store your fats away from light and heat to avoid rancid. Rancid fats are not good. And when I hear people say to me, "Oh, I tried olive oil, but it smelled funny," then that's a sign that that oil is rancid, and you would not want to take that. So looking at heart-healthy fats, the monounsaturated fatty acids, the MUFA, are things such as nuts, preferably unsalted and raw, things like almonds, cashews, walnuts, and then other foods like avocado, and oils like olive oil and canola oil. Other heart-healthy fats are omega-3 fatty acids. You may have heard of those. Those are essential. We need those for our health. And those are common. I didn't put trout down here, but that's probably one that's from this area that you could have access to. Trout, cold water fish, trout, salmon, sardines, tuna. Plant sources of omega-3 fatty acids would be flaxseed, walnuts, and dark leafy vegetables. So I did make a note here about omega-3s, watching the mercury. You know, we live in a world where there's a lot of exposure to toxicity, and so we have to make choices, and it's not always easy to do. It's kind of complicated. Fats to avoid or limit are the saturated. Now, we talked about the monounsaturated. These are the saturated fats These are solid at room temperature. And so these are some of our favorites: butter, lard, red meat, and cheese. It's not to say you can't eat these, but you maybe start substituting some of the healthier fats and reduce your intake of these saturated fats. The reason is that these negatively impact your cholesterol levels. These raise the LDL. That's one of the other lipids that is looked at with your blood work, your annual blood work. Carbohydrates, or carbs, as they're affectionately called. I've just outlined a few categories of the carbohydrates. And whole grains, I want to emphasize the importance of whole grains, and we're going to look at a picture shortly about those. These have the whole bran intact. It has all the B vitamins, it has fiber, it has some minerals in it, and you lose that with white flour. I mean, the white diet is bad, really, seriously. I mean, white flour, white rice, it's bad because it doesn't have any nutrition, and it will spike up, sugars. So when possible, I would encourage people to have some of these examples. Brown rice, blue corn atole, quinoa. Quinoa is a South American grain that's now being grown in this country. Non-starchy vegetables. Fill your plate with non-starchy vegetables. These will be less in calories, less in carbohydrate, and it will provide some fullness as you're eating. It takes getting used to. If you're not used to eating vegetables, and I talk with a lot of people who do not eat very many vegetables, it takes getting used to, but these are some examples: broccoli, beets, carrots, tomato, zucchini, turnips. Now, the non-starchy vegetables, for those of you who are diabetic or have diabetic family members, you want to limit these. These, are enjoyable foods, and yet you want to watch the portion sizes, because this will, affect your blood sugars more dramatically than the non-starchy vegetables. And then I've listed some fruits here, some favorite fruits, which can provide a sense of sweet. I think in diet, we tend to limit ourselves to just a handful of foods. And if we can have a variety of foods, and sweet is an important part of, the eating experience, to enjoy that, but preferably having a fruit as opposed to a candy bar or cake or cookies. So this is a picture of whole grains, and I just love this blue corn, and I hope one day to learn how to prepare it. It's just beautiful. And then you see over here other whole grains. There's yellow corn, and this looks like millet and barley. You've got some brown rice. And so these grains are intact. They have their natural color. They haven't been processed. And so this is going to provide more nutrition for you. So let's look at a diet. This is an example of a diet. There's many diets. This one will kind of put everything together for you. It's the DASH diet. It's dietary approaches to stop hypertension, high blood pressure. And this diet has been studied extensively, and it really works. I mean, if you have high blood pressure and you follow this diet, your blood pressure will drop by 10, 20 points in some cases. I will not kid you, this is a challenging diet, and we'll see a diagram of this shortly. But it does provide a balanced approach. You get a variety of foods, whole grains, lower fat dairy, fruits and vegetables. The challenge with this diet, probably for many of you, might be there's less red meat involved with this. It's low in sodium and sugar, and it's something that really the whole family can benefit from. To add to the diet, I would say if you included daily activity, that would also improve your health as well. So this is a diagram, a pyramid of the DASH diet. And you'll see at the base of this, at the very foundation, is our fruits and vegetables, and mostly vegetables, mostly non-starchy vegetables. And so again, this might be a real shift for many. This is the foundation of the diet. And then you see up here, seafood and lean meat, you have 2 per day, but 3 ounces serving. That might be considerably less than what you're used to, but you're going to be filling up on this base here and these whole grains here. And then looking at the top, sweets, 5 per week. For some of you, you know, you may be used to having maybe several sweets a day. And so it's going to require some patience on your part and just giving it time to practice these things. But this diet does work, and it gives, the nice thing about this pyramid is it gives serving sizes. So we talked about the protein, 3 ounces serving, and we'll look at portion sizes in just a moment. You know, half a cup of cereal. I mean, you might be used to having maybe 2 cups of cereal. So you're really looking at portion sizes, serving sizes. So I like this diagram because it's very clean and very easy to follow. And it's simple. You can remember this easily. And basically you're looking at a plate. And this is, I mean, I basically try to follow this way of eating. And I'm not diabetic, but especially for diabetics, if you can imagine your plate and half of your plate is these non-starchy vegetables. Maybe you have salad, maybe you have some cucumber and you have some broccoli or whatever vegetables you like, half your plate. And then your protein is going to be about what we said, 3 ounces. That's about 1/4 of your plate. And then you have some kind of starch. Maybe you have corn or you have peas or something like that, potato, but again, a smaller portion, maybe half a cup. And in addition, you have some type of dairy and fruit. And this is a balanced way of eating. It provides all the major food categories that you need. And if you have a variety of color and texture, then you'll pretty much get what you need in terms of your nutrition. So now let's move into how to make all this happen. Meal planning, as I mentioned earlier, part of those 3 M's. This is really very critical. And so as you're looking at changing your diet and changing your lifestyle, meal planning is going to be really important, and it takes some time. But as you go along, you will find that, you know, it moves a little bit quicker. I really suggest discussing your menu ideas with your family and loved ones, sitting down, spending it, you know, finding some time to do that, and, you know, putting some menu ideas together and coming up with a grocery list. A list is very important because you want to include, like I say, the balance of different foods. So you have a good balance of protein, fat, and carbohydrate, and the food, also the foods that, you know, you like to prepare. And include in this a variety of foods with different taste, color, and texture. And this makes food more interesting because I think sometimes we get bored eating the same thing. And so just trying something new. And maybe you try it and you, oh my God, I'm never going to eat that again. But maybe you like it. And so, you know, give yourself a chance to try new things and explore. And it can be sort of fun that way. And children especially love to, you know, discover new vegetables and things like that. That's been my experience anyway. So, and also through the menu planning, you can begin to build a healthy food pantry. Whatever is in your house is going to get eaten. And if you have a lot of fast foods and so-called junky foods and sodas and things like this, that's what you're going to eat. So begin to build, you know, bring in some new foods that are going to provide health and it's going to support good health. But I realize this is going to take some time and money to do that. So the next step is grocery shopping. So refer to your grocery list. Definitely don't shop when you're hungry. I've made that mistake numerous times. Focus on fresh foods, whole foods, foods that are one ingredient, like a potato instead of potato chips. And if you shop the perimeter of the store, usually that's where most of your fresh foods are. You know, fresh baked goods, you've got produce, fruits, you know, milk, yogurt, things like that. And stay away from the foods that are high in salt and sugar. The perimeter of the store has the fresh foods. The rest of the 50 aisles in the store are basically packaged foods of one form or another. Some may be a little healthier than others, but many of them have a lot of additives, loaded with salt and sugar. And so another skill to learn will be how to read food labels. And that's very important to understand what it is you're eating. You know, our bodies are sacred and we put these things in it and sometimes we don't even know what it is. This diagram is about salt, and imagine, let's say, this is not that unrealistic, that you have a can of soup, and that can of soup has 500 milligrams of sodium per serving, and there's 3 servings in that can. If you have that entire can, you have consumed 1,500 milligrams of salt, and it's basically the limit for the day. For some people, it's usually 1,500 to 2,000 a day. And so just being aware of how much you're consuming, looking at labels. If it says 300 milligrams or less, that's an okay amount. If you're eating a lot of things like crackers, pretzels, pizza, things like that, it's going to have a lot of salt in it. And so if you can begin to find other things to eat other than those foods, or really try to balance it out, limit it, watch your serving size with those foods. Because we know that excessive sodium can contribute to high blood pressure. And high blood pressure can have some very dramatic health consequences, and it's very controllable. You may also experience sometimes, if you've had a lot of salt, that you feel kind of puffy and, you know, just kind of bloated and things like that because you're holding those fluids. So watching your portions and let's see. Okay, so next, food preparation. Pick a day to cook. Some of you may be home more and you can cook frequently throughout the week, but pick some times to cook, spend some time cooking. You can prepare some foods ahead of time for the week. You can freeze some of that food, and then I recommend you date and label it. And then also you can maybe slice and dice some vegetables and get ready for future use to have those, because sometimes people, they just want to cook something really quickly, and if it's part of it's already prepared, it's easier to include in your diet. Eating environment is very important, and the meal pattern. And I really suggest that, you know, so often we're on the go, or rush, grab something to go. Sit down to eat. Relax as you're eating. Eat with your family and friends. At least make a few times a week that you make this a practice. This has been studied in public health, and it lowers your risk for a lot of things by just simply eating together and sitting down. Giving thanks. I mean, we're very grateful. We have a lot of abundance, many of us. And so to give thanks for what we have. Eating at regular intervals is especially important for diabetics, but for all of us, because if we go for long periods of time without eating, you know, our blood sugars are going to start to drop. We won't have the same energy or vitality. So eating at regular intervals, you know, not really going more than about 4 hours. Focus on eating only. This also has been studied a lot in public health. And, you know, focus on your eating and your interactions with the people that you're eating with. And no phone, computer, tablets, TV, all that contributes to what we call mindless eating. You're overeating because you're not really paying attention to eating. You want to chew your food, savor the taste, enjoy laughter and conversation. And that will really, I think, plays an important part in nutrition health. So looking at some serving sizes, you may have seen this in the past using the hand. You know, if a fist is about 1 cup, the palm is about 3 ounces. So this can be a useful tool for identifying what the serving sizes is, because it's not only what we're eating, but how much and the right balance of things. This is the stages of behavior change, which many of you are probably familiar with. There's 5 stages, and I would say that probably those of you who are here today are at least in the preparation stage, if not action and maintenance. But wherever you are, the first step is to become aware of the problem. So maybe you aren't really aware of the problem, and so you're in the pre-contemplative stage. Then you have more awareness of, oh yeah, high blood pressure. My doctor told me I have high blood pressure. So, but you're not quite ready to make changes. So then you come to an event like this and you learn how to cook. We're going to have a cooking demonstration. I mean, that's awesome. And then you start to gather information, and then you get mentally ready to take action. And I think it's important to have the support of family and friends in this whole process. And we're not going to do it perfectly, but this it's important to know where you are and be ready to change. Because, you know, I having worked with hundreds of people over the years, thousands maybe, people aren't going to change until they're ready. And so you don't want to badger people, or, you know, certainly not be the diet police. Like sometimes people put me in that position, but, you know, just trying to give gentle guidance and information, and then people will decide, hopefully, to make these changes or not. So goal setting, a little bit about goal setting. This is maybe geared more for sort of corporate world, but I think it can apply to the individual as well. The SMART goal setting: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timing. And I would say, without going into great detail on this, that plan realistically. You know, if you want to lose 40 pounds for your brother's wedding in May, that's not realistic. And you set yourself up for disappointment and not being successful with this. And so having something specific, and perhaps even today, think about what you can do today, what you can do just today to change something that will add to your health. And you know, that's being specific. Maybe it's going to be, I'm going to cut back my juice. I had juice for breakfast. I'm not going to have it at dinner, or something simple, but something specific and achievable. So we've talked about meal planning and the variety of foods and texture and taste, mindful eating, eating slowly, eating with friends and family, looking at serving sizes and avoiding screen time while eating, setting realistic, attainable goals, including your family and friends in this process, and using available resources for you. Some people in our communities have eating disorders, or they have really significant problems that they need outside help with. And so that's important, to get the help that you need, whatever that might be. Counseling, it might be seeing endocrinologist or other specialists, but get the help that you need. And so I want to close with this quote from Virginia Woolf: one cannot think well, love well, sleep well if one has not dined well. So with that, I conclude my presentation, and I thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say, and I wish you health and happiness. And there are some resources here, including my contact information.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. It looks like we do have some questions in the chat, so I'd like to go over some of the questions that were asked. The first question is, what ideas do you have for using traditional tribal appropriate foods?
Well, that's a very good question. And I know a little bit, but I don't really know a lot about some of your traditional foods. But from what I understand, the beans and the squash and turnips and blue corn and things like that are traditional chili. I think there's a way to honor the traditions and grandma's recipes and maybe tweak them a little bit. So maybe instead of using something like lard, you might experiment. Try using, some olive oil or some other healthier oils, or maybe you have a smaller portion of that, traditional food if it's including things that are kind of outside the healthy diet arena. But I would love to learn more about traditional foods, and I think that sort of brings up something too that my hope is that there's people out there or family members who may have an interest in studying nutrition that are from the communities, because we really need that. We need that diversity, because you can speak to some of these issues more from that culture. And UNM has a great nutrition program, so I'll just put in a plug there.
Thank you.
Does that answer?
And also, yes, and also Mary Silent Walker will also, I'm sure she has some wonderful ideas as well. She has her Facebook Live series each Sunday where she specifically makes tribal recipes. So
there you go. She's the expert. That's great.
So we will ask her that as well. If you want to address that, Mary, during your presentation, that would be wonderful. So everyone, we will have the slides, Sarah's slides available. We will have them on our website. As when the event is over, we'll send you a link to the website with all the presentations and as well as the video for this presentation. Okay, let's see here. Also, we have one other question. What does tempeh fit into the food groups? Where does tempeh fit into the food groups?
Is there tempeh?
Tempeh.
Okay, tempeh. Yeah, great. I'm glad you brought that up. Tempeh is a soy-based product, and it will provide vegetable source of protein. And I love tempeh. Tempeh is a nice alternative to having meat. It's kind of a dense food in a sense, and you can saute it, add lots of vegetables with it. It would be a protein. So
okay,
great question.
There's another question. Is there a go-to website or source you'd recommend to understand how we might shop wiser or understand more about ideal amounts of sodium, carbs, or on food labels? And that might be in the resources.
Yeah, there are some resources there. I have eatright.org. That's a good one. American Heart Association has a lot of recipes. I'll just make a comment about resources. Typically, when you're looking at different websites, focus more on the ones that are edu or org. They will be less likely to be selling you something. I mean, there are some good .coms, but you'll have better, more scientific educational information from some of the universities and from organizations, nonprofits, things like American Heart Association, American Diabetes Association, things like that. But I did list some there. And I think it's just sorting through and getting to some accurate information. American Kidney Org is also one too.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. It looks like we have one last question, and then we're going to go ahead and go introduce our next speaker. What type of fat is olive oil margarine considered?
Olive oil margarine. That's a good question. I would say that that's probably a blend. So it's a blend of, if it's solid, then it does have some saturated fat. And that's the thing about fats, is they're not all entirely one thing. It's different percentages. But if it's mostly like for example, mostly unsaturated, then they call it unsaturated. So that would be a good, that's a good substitute, because it will give the spread and sort of the mouthfeel that you're looking for perhaps, but less of the saturated. So it's probably a blend of saturated and unsaturated.